I've, Hi, everybody. Uh, I'm Kara, and I'm here with our SDS team to talk with you about some interesting topics for our provider info share. And we're super glad that you're here. I'm displaying our agenda today, and we'll definitely have time for Q&A if you would like. But I did want to let you know that, of course, we have Delight and Cassandra and Kat, and Damon. Kat is our care coordinator liaison. Damon, Delight, and Cassandra are our training team, along with myself, Kara. We also have Summer Wheeler with our provider certification and compliance team. And we want to start out our talk today about American Rescue Plan Act funding. Summer's available to answer questions and clear up understandings for us only until 2:30. So we want to let her go first. We wanted to provide some updates about the American Rescue Plan Act, which is basically environmental modifications for homes that are licensed and certified to provide group home, child and or adult family hab home, or residential supported living. This is really different than waiver EMODs, which are not available to these provider groups. And I wanted to call attention to that because it's really important that our provider groups know about this. We're getting applications, but we'd like to see more. Summer, I have the application and I have the overview sheet available. If you want me to show that, what would be the best way to go? You want me to show the application and you could talk about it?
Sure. Yeah, I think that's a great idea, Kat or Kara. I'm sorry.
Huh?
I had received a little bit of feedback recently saying that providers were finding the application a little challenging. So there wasn't any specific information given about which parts of the application were challenging, but I would certainly welcome any questions from anyone on the call about things that they may have heard as well. Really, the application sort of mirrors what our current application packets look like for certification. The coloring is a little bit different, but really we're looking for providers who are licensed and certified, as Kara had said. We are using a tiered approach to how we're evaluating applications, primarily because we want to support the group homes and residential supported living licensed homes prior to family home habilitation locations, simply because individuals living in the family home habilitation setting are still eligible for EMOD through their waiver. So really, this is very standard. I don't know if we want to walk all the way through this, Kara, but this is really standard. It's just the provider information, the agency information, the contractor selected to perform the work. So we require at least two bids or information about why two bids could not be obtained. But then the provider agency will select the contractor to perform the work and include the information listed there. We required the provider agency contacts and the name of the person authorized to do the billing on behalf of the agency. That name must match the authorized agent within MMIS in order for that payment to actually go through. This middle section for the application checklist is really everything that is required to be included in the application. So we want the application. We have an attestation form that we'll get to in a minute. There's the property owner consent, only if the property is leased or rented, two contractor bids, and then photos of areas to be modified and the description of the project. And I want to pause right there for just 1 second because I think it's important to know that we will or that we are accepting applications for projects that have already occurred. So we are looking at reimbursements for projects that were initiated or completed or initiated really after July 1 of 2021. So if work had already been completed by a provider agency, we will take a look at the reimbursement. So some of those requirements might change a little bit, but if you have any questions, you can certainly send them to the ARPA inbox, and I'll give you guys that email address before we're off the call. This section here is the individuals to be served. We're really looking to see if the home is currently serving an individual with complex needs, or if the provider is intending to serve a specific population with similar complex needs. This is important because this does factor into the tier requirement and how we evaluate the applications. So and complex needs, and this is where I don't know if you're able to float over to the fund overview, Kara. Um, but we define complex needs as individuals exhibiting destructive, elopement, violent, sexualized, or other behaviors or complex medical needs that excuse me one second, that necessitate a modification to the home to meet the health and safety of the individual residents and staff and allow the individual to remain in the community. So we have seen some applications that have been submitted that are where providers are identifying that they're serving individuals with complex needs, but they're defining complex as individuals who meet the level of care requirements for the waiver. This opportunity is for individuals who have a higher threshold of needs, medical, behavioral, or a combination of both. So please, as you're talking with providers and or families, make sure that you refer to this definition, as that's going to be really important for the application process as we're evaluating them. You can go back to the application, Kara. Thank you. And scroll down, please. So this next page, page 2, is the description of the project that either will meet the needs of the individuals that are currently served, or the second, number 2, is the individuals that that provider may intend to serve. And so the fund overview does have a list. So I'm going to keep making you flip-flop, Kara. The fund overview form does have a list of suggested examples. If you can scroll down a little bit.
Yeah.
There's some examples of what the modifications or enhancements may look like, but the list is not exhaustive. So if there's other things that providers have identified as, you know, an item or modification or an enhancement to their home that would actually make it a safe living environment, then again, this list is not exhaustive and they should complete an application and submit it for evaluation. All right, go back to the application, please. Thank you. Scroll down. So then we are looking for the provider to identify the cost estimate summary from the bid that they selected or from the contractor they selected. So they'll just do a summation of the information right here. And then on page 3, that's where they'll go into additional information about a cost estimate, whether they were unable to obtain 2 estimates, or if the provider is choosing to select the more expensive option. That doesn't automatically mean that that the money will not be awarded. There's $3.6 million in ARPA funding for this opportunity. We just want to understand better why the higher bid is the preferred contractor. Scroll down, please. This middle section, if the rural area, and we were hoping to receive applications from the more rural areas, we have yet to see that. We've received a few, but if there are shipping costs associated with completing one of these ARPA EMOD projects in those more rural communities, we will take a look at shipping costs. So please don't let that be a deterrent for why a provider wouldn't submit an application. There's $75,000 allotted per licensed home. That is quite a bit more money than the more recent change to $40,000 per individual, which is an increase even from the $18,500 per individual. So it is quite a lot of money, but we want to make sure that individuals can remain in their community. So it's really important, though, that we get these applications. The original application period was set to end on February 15th. We recently extended it to February 28th. At this point, there is no intention on extending that due date again. So please, if you are having conversations with people, let them know that they need to submit their applications and get them into us. We certainly want the monies to be used in the way that this opportunity is intended. And then we have the provider assurance that just, the above is true and correct. You can go to the next page, Kara, please. And then this is the attestation. This really is for the provider to complete, indicating that they are the registered agent, that they have been certified since, for a residential habilitation service since July 1 of 2021. They are in good standing. That is one thing that folks on the call should know. If the provider is in a probationary certification status, then they are not eligible for this opportunity. I should also note that contractual relationships between a larger oversight agency and a rendering family home habilitation location, those rendering locations are eligible as well, as long as that oversight agency is not in a probationary period. And I won't read through all of this. It just indicates that the provider has read the fund overview and understands what the money is to be used for, and that the project that they're submitting to us meets the scope of that fund overview.
And we'll certainly send these out to people on the call. But where can people find these forms?
So if you send an email to hss.dsds.arpa@alaska.gov, we're happy to send applications out. There were several e-alerts where the applications were attached, but please don't go and search your inbox for those. Just reach out and I'm happy to attach the application packet for you. All inquiries should also be sent to this email address. We're happy to answer anything. There's no questions too little, too big. When in doubt, ask, please. And when in doubt, submit an application, because we would much prefer to see this money, again, get used for its intended purpose. And then this final page is really if you are working with a property owner or a provider who's leasing or renting the property, then we do require the property owner's consent to make the modifications or enhancements to the home. And right now we've seen some traffic of submissions in both reimbursements and true requests for future modifications. It is not to the degree that we were hoping or that we thought we would see. So any assistance all of you can provide by having conversations with providers and or families about this opportunity would be greatly appreciated. We want to see a flood of applications come in, truly. So I don't know if anyone has any questions. That was kind of a higher level overview, but if there's something specific or that you have heard in your conversations with families or providers and you want to get clarification, please ask.
So has this helped you understand more about the ARPA funding? Have you talked about it with anybody, any of our providers with us here on the call? Care coordinators, anybody? You can just unmute yourself and jump in. If you want to show your camera, you can. It's up to you.
Hey, Kara, can we go back to the list of like
Hmm.
options, like the list of different ways you could use the funds? Because sometimes seeing that visual of lists can be helpful for folks to get a
Yeah.
gauge of like there are
Hmm.
a lot of possible resources that you could obtain for your home that could really help.
Right. Security and alerts, enhanced fencing, soundproofing, sensory modifications, steel toilet, bolted furniture, lighting fixture modifications. Sometimes people need their lighting to be not overhead, but lower lighting works for somebody, sensory wise. Secured wall mounts, enhanced plumbing, high grade furniture, motion detection technology, plexiglass or safety glass modifications, a soft bathtub, height adjustable changing tables, ceiling lifts and or tracks, and other modifications as needed to mitigate health and safety risks for residents with complex needs and staff of the home. So this is a list that is intended to, either answer your question about what can happen or to make you think about something that might help somebody, who's living in a, a group home or residential supported living or family hab home.
And it's different than an EMOD. Our EMODs are a lot more structured. So this is a really wonderful opportunity, especially for upgrading furniture so that it's going to be a grade that will help maintain its longevity over the
Hmm.
long run, and
Right.
other specific tools that you can see on there that aren't usually approved through an EMOD.
Hmm.
So not only is this serving a different group than what a different environment, because typically EMODs are for folks to live independently at home. This is focusing on group homes and residential supported living. So that's the RSL. So that's really big. And there's a lot of options.
And if a provider has already made those modifications, it's possible they could seek reimbursement of it through this method as well, through this pot of money. So it's important to know about. We'd like to see a whole lot more applications come in, especially since the deadline is coming up, which is why we are letting you know about it. What are your thoughts? Anybody on the call? Questions for Summer? Questions for any of us with training?
Maybe there will be an influx of emails afterwards, Karen. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
we
I
will
can
get
put that.
questions.
Yeah, I can put the email in the chat, and I can send it to us as well. And Summer, we can put our heads together to think about a way to outreach, to our provider groups. This is just one meeting,
Mhm.
that we're jumping in with 2 feet here. But I mean, the recording is great because we can also point people who have questions to this recording because it'll go on our YouTube site. And we'll just take it from there. We'll do the best we can to help get the word out. Any other question? Last call for questions for Summer because she has to go. Anybody? A few people just joined us. We were talking about the ARPA EMOD project where group home and family hab and RSL can have modifications up to a certain dollar amount, which is pretty high. And the deadline to apply is the 28th. So, okay. Well, I guess we're good. The group is quiet. Thank you, Summer. We'll let you go
Thank you,
and
everyone.
appreciate it. Yeah. Thanks for
Thank
jumping
you.
in.
Bye.
Bye. All right. Well, I'm going to share our agenda again. Let me actually go back to the agenda. Um, I will give us a little bit of a talk now to address cost of care amount. We do get a lot of questions, and it seems to be kind of cyclic in nature. And it means that, we're getting more questions about cost of care amount. So I'm prepared to share with us a little bit of the basics about cost of care. Cost of care, otherwise called COCA, cost of care amount, is an amount of money that some of our Medicaid waiver recipients, um, it could be that they live in licensed homes getting waiver residential services, or it could be people who don't happen to live in licensed homes. They may also have a cost of care. It's an amount that is determined by DPA, Division of Public Assistance, and it is a cost calculation which looks at the person's benefit income minus their minus their personal needs allowance, which is an amount um, an amount decided in legislature where a person either they live on their own or they live in the community. I mean, they live on their own in the community or they live in a residential waiver home. So there are two different amounts that are written in legislature. That is the maximum amount that a person can use to pay for their personal needs. And in this case, personal needs, and in that reg, personal needs means room and board. Um, it gets a little confusing because not all people who we serve have that much in benefit income. And a person who receives over the amount of the PNA, personal needs allowance, will have to pay that amount to the waiver provider of their choice. And if they live in a residential service, meaning group home, RSL, family hab, and they're an adult, they'll have to pay they'll have to pay that cost of care to the residential provider. And it is just the difference between their income in benefits and the personal needs allowance. A lot of people get that confused with a regulation that's from assisted living licensing. And assisted living licensing has a regulation about managing a resident's money. Okay. Managing residents' money is this one right here that is different than determination of cost of care. So the determination of cost of care is an amount that the person must pay to their residential waiver provider or another waiver provider. We usually say they should choose the one that provides the most services. In some cases, it's the care coordinator. In some cases, it's the supported living provider or something like that. Um, they should pay that cost of care towards their provider of largest services. So that's a little bit about how it's developed. There's the personal needs allowance determined in legislature. Two kinds of personal needs allowance are described in regulation. One of them is one amount is for people who live on their own in the community or live not in a residential home, residential service, and the other one is for people who live in licensed assisted living home getting waiver services. How does it work? When a person is set to owe cost of care, they'll get a letter from DPA, and the letter will say, uh, or actually healthcare services. The letter will say, starting next month, you will owe this much in cost of care, and it will tell you the amount. And that is when the person needs to begin paying cost of care. When I've taught this, I say that the easiest way to track it is if the person just writes a separate check for the cost of care amount, separate from the room and board that they're paying to the residential provider if they're in the residence. They pay that cost of care to the residential provider or to another provider, and they continue to pay it until they get a letter from healthcare services again that says you are to stop paying cost of care on this date, and it's the next month. So they let you know when you're going to stop paying it. Um, the provider who receives cost of care payment from the person will take that cost of care amount out of the billing. They'll reduce their reimbursement request by that amount when they create billing, to Alaska Medicaid. So because of that, cost of care is basically understood as a copay. So cost of care is a copay determined through by taking the personal needs allowance, depending on which applies to the person, and comparing it to their benefit income. And then they either do or do not have cost of care payment. If a person has a cost of care payment that's excessively high, they should contact their DPA caseworker about that because DPA is involved with their their benefit income. So they're going to take a look at that benefit income and see if they can apply more deductions to the cost of care. Now, what is that? A deduction to a cost of care is some, and I don't know all of DPA's rules, but they have many deductions that they can take in order to possibly reduce the cost of care. For example, medical expenses that the person is paying out of pocket. They can, if they have not reported those expenses to their caseworker at DPA, then they could have those expenses taken off to reduce their cost of care. The hint on that is that they need a prescription for it. So if they're buying a non-prescription medication, if they talk to their provider about that, they and get a prescription, then it's an uncovered medical expense and then they can be deducted from cost of care. There has been some different communications that have gone out over the years about cost of care. We do have a webinar available on our YouTube. There's the link for it. You'll also have a link sent to you when we email you these handouts. There's a link to the regulation about managing a person's money. A person living in a licensed assisted living home, whether it's a group home or an RSL or even a family hab, if the home is managing the person's money, they can manage up to $100 a month, and they have to put it in a separate account. And there's all kinds of rules around that.
Diego is supposed, he
Did
said he's
somebody have
supposed
a question? Did you have a question? That's okay. There is also guidance on the web about when people live in an assisted living home and there's a cost of care. There is a education for a provider there. It's just a worksheet that tells you what to do regarding your billing if a person gets a cost of care, that you must accept the cost of care and then you must reduce your billing amount by that cost of care that you got from the person. Okay, so what are your questions about cost of care? Does anybody work with somebody who has cost of care? Have you ever helped a person look at the letter about cost of care? I'll look in the chat. Perhaps we have a question there. Okay, the question says, what about a assisted living home, who takes advance payment for 2 years, yet allows the client to take from that like an ATM? Is that allowing the assisted living home to manage funds? Okay, so it is okay for a home to take advanced payment from a person for their room and board. I know that's I can point out a reg about that, but holding money for people over and above that without it being related to room and board, because I mean people do, it's actually great to if a home will take room and board payment in advance. It helps a person be ready for if something happened to their benefits. If there was a delay in payment, uh, any kind of delays can happen. The government can delay your payment. It can and does happen that your benefits don't come in until your payment to the home would be late. Um, Banking problems. The bank itself might not send an automatic payment or something like that. It's a good idea, but as far as acting like a bank to a person, based on what you wrote, I'm not saying there aren't special factors that I don't know about that would like nullify what I'm saying, but based on what you wrote, $100 a month is the most a home can manage. And I can actually run to that reg and see if I can display that for us. Um, let's see. Okay, let's take a look at that, and then we'll know a little bit more. Share reg. Okay, acceptance and management of residents' money. Um, it's it's an interesting reg. It says provide for an amount not to exceed $100 a month that the assisted living home may keep on hand for the resident to use to meet their day-to-day needs, unless they have other sources of money for that purpose. A home shall establish a system for residents to request withdrawals. The home shall advise the resident of the available balance of their daily needs money. At the time of each withdrawal, it shall keep a record of all withdrawals and balances. So I think seeing this reg, you might, it's possible that a home might have an arrangement with a person like that that complies with that reg. Assisted living licensing, it'll usually be on their rental agreement with them about that. So since licensing sees all those things and approves all those things, it's probably compliant. Um, but without excessive detail, I can't say yes or no. All right. Other thoughts, other questions about cost of care?
Kara, can I just jump in? And one of the best things that you can advise as a provider is, or practice as a provider, is keeping really clear receipts
Hmm.
and records of all transactions of this nature. This
Hmm.
is this is a very important piece
Hmm.
of finances, so I would
Okay, start
recommend
to count.
that that would be something to
Hmm.
encourage the individual or their guardian to ask for and manage.
Yeah, and if a person becomes over income, then they risk losing Medicaid. And the way people who have Medicaid and waivers need to be working with their over income is to establish a trust. And I'm not prepared today to teach fully about trusts, but this is the classic thing that people do. They establish a Miller's trust or an ABLE account, depending on what they're eligible for. And they, whoever manages their money, including themselves, if they do it, they make sure that the correct amount of money just to remain eligible for Medicaid for the kind of Medicaid that they have is in their bank account. They pay their room and board, they pay for things they need, and then the rest they put into their trust. And then where they withdraw from the trust for allowable expenses, basically for the protection, care, and community involvement or education of the person. And then that particular trust is under irrevocable trust rules. So the trust is kept until the end of their life, and whatever's left in that trust at the end of their life goes back into Medicaid because that's where the money came from to begin with. Um, that's my nutshell version of trust. Not a lot of info there, but usually that's what people will do. So the description of, having somebody put a bunch of money into an assisted living home, perhaps they have overage and they should be establishing a trust because it's their the it may be outside of what the home is there to do. I don't really know because I don't know the details. Okay, a client who has no cost of care will still have to pay room and board. Yes, every client who lives in a licensed assisted living home getting waiver residential services must pay a room and board. If a person has SSI or SSDI, and yes, they usually have Social Security. People usually have adult public assistance, APA, if they qualify for that. Some people get too much in Social Security to qualify for APA. It all depends on their income and where it came from and their age and if they have other benefit incomes, like if they worked and they have retirement income, things like that. Yes, a person will pay their room and board from their benefit income. If they aren't getting funds, how is room and board paid? Well, room and board needs to be paid by their benefit income. If people are not getting benefit income, then they should be assisted to apply for benefits. I don't know, like there are 100 bazillion things that could prevent a benefit income from being paid. There's a long, long list of eligibilities that have to be in play. A person must remain eligible for Medicaid. Suppose they don't, renew their application for Medicaid and then they get kicked off Medicaid. a person's medical condition could change. They could be found to not meet level of care. A provider could not be current in their certification and enrollment, but they're in that person's plan of care. That there's tons of things that could happen where that it doesn't get it doesn't they don't get paid. But if they are not getting benefit income, they should be assisted to apply for benefits. The only other caveat I could give to that is if benefits stop for some reason, sometimes benefits stop because of the change of a representative payee for Social Security, like a representative payee dies and nobody applies to be a rep payee for that person, or the person themselves can no longer be their rep payee, or they don't renew their Social Security, something happened, then it's not going to, the funding is not going to come. Their benefits aren't going to come. So um, for those periods of time, benefits will stop. But when the person applies again, the the Social Security will retroactively provide their benefits going back to the day it stopped, as long as they find eligibility. Family members and GoFundMe's and things like that. I I would I would say to stay away from that because it shows as a resource for the person, because they get a question about, well, what other resources do you have to pay this? Well, if they're a person living with disability to the point of needing facility level of care, having Medicaid, financially eligible for Medicaid, and needing this kind of facility level of care, they're going to not. It is not practical to say the person is going to get money donated to them or have a family pay for them forever, because then that becomes an asset, and it can be counted. I guess just saying it plain, it'll be counted against them in their analysis of their income, money they can spend for their care. That happens too when people get an inheritance. Like there's a well-meaning aunt or somebody who leaves a lot of money to somebody with a disability, and then they're not eligible for Medicaid, and that's not enough money to live out the rest of your days on, or to pay for everything that you need, even for a few months. And it's quite a bit of money that it costs to pay to self pay for these cares. That requires a lot of effort and establishment. My best answer is establishment of a trust that will make that person eligible for Medicaid again. And so that is my mini answer to complicated problems. One financial benefit, okay, that a Medicaid waiver client is receiving that will help pay room and board. Is it negotiable, or is it a flat rate chosen by the RSL? Is the RSL allowed to ask the client their income? Um, yeah, I guess they can ask their client their income. Their The scoop on it is that the personal needs allowance is the most a person can spend on, from their benefits on personal needs, which is room and board. So the personal needs allowance for somebody living in a home getting waiver services, I want to say is $1,396, $1,396. That's my best recollection. You have to go look at the reg to make sure it's right. But it's determined in legislature, hasn't changed in years, and some people do not receive that much money in benefits each month because they don't have they don't have a work history. Like, for example, adults with intellectual developmental disability, they don't have the work history that adults without intellectual developmental disability have a lot of times. So they're not going to have a benefit income from work. Um, the home has to charge what the person can afford. So if it's 1396 and the person makes that much or more in benefits, the and the home is managing up to $100 of their income, then it's going to be 1296. And if the person doesn't make that much in benefits, then they have to charge them what they can afford. Most people with intellectual developmental disability probably get the maximum amount of Social Security. I'm talking about adults. Um, and I'm not even counting APA, but whatever they get from Social Security is going to be the max that they get. So the home isn't going to be able to charge as much. The other rules about room and board is that people should be charged the same for getting the same things. So we're not charging people with Medicaid more or less than anybody else who doesn't happen to have I don't it regardless of whether the home works with people who don't have Medicaid, they have to look at where they're at and what they offer and charge what the person can afford. I hope this helps. Okay. So let's go to a document. Our agenda. Next topic was long-term care communications. This is a great document that we have about DPA and the long-term care unit within DPA. Division of Public Assistance is benefits for everybody, regardless of their eligibility. So within them, there's long-term care. That's our people, the people we serve, people who use their benefit income and their eligibility because they have long-term care needs, like waiver level of care, right? In our case. So here's some communications. DPA has made some upgrades to their communications, and for email communications, they prefer DSM. Uh, there's a general inbox, and there it is, and you can use it for document submission, formal communication, questions and requests, and what you can expect for a response. For email communication, Outlook can be used. Um, it's for document submission only. They don't respond to questions. And there's an auto response that will tell you that you sent it in, and they'll just work those in the order of date of receipt. Phone or voicemail can be used for contacting a caseworker, and this is a main number, an 800 number, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. The calls get forwarded to the caseworker, and they get returned in 3 to 4 days. They have a dedicated fax. It is not for questions. It's for submitting documents. They have the physical office. People can drop off documents, and they will not be able to be seen by their caseworker in the offices. So a person couldn't go there and wait for their caseworker. They just drop them off. Case-specific questions, contact the caseworker directly using the list we just looked at. If there is no caseworker assigned to the person, every once in a while, people will get a letter that says, basically, you have a new caseworker, you have no caseworker. It just means they don't have a caseworker assigned and they're just trying to reallocate people to workers. If the person is in that phase of their DPA journey, then they can still contact, right? So contact all LTC leadership via email, DSM, or voicemail. If there's no response from the caseworker after 4 days, contact their leadership. Suggestions and tips. Submitting documents submit them via one communication channel only. If you send something to everyone or the same thing to all of those thinking that it's going to go faster, it will not. They're working these inboxes, if you will, in the order that things are received. They give you a nice handy link for their forms. If you have an email about if you're thinking about people and you have multiple people and you want to email, do one email per client. Like, for example, our care coordinator community. As long as you have an ROI in place for your release of information, you can email them to help a person, but not multiple people in one email, please. One email per person. And have the current ROI. Here's the leadership.
And sorry, Kara, and for ROI,
Yeah.
there the DPA ROI, not our ROI.
Correct.
When you
The
go on the link,
DPA.
it's a Gen
Hmm.
58, I think, right? That's what it's called, I think.
Yes, it's
But
Gen
it has to be
58.
their release of information. That comes up a lot.
Hmm.
So
It does. Hmm. Has to be their specific ROI, not ours. I know we're all state offices, but they don't take our ROI. They have to take theirs because it releases information to their processes. Ours releases information to our processes. They're different. Okay. And here's your leadership list and caseworkers, and that's it. Usually a person's letter from DPA will have the caseworker name on it. If not, um, you could probably treat it like a no caseworker assigned situation, which they went over in this form, in this document. Um, and we'll send that to you as well. Okay, let's see here. Some suggestions about DPA auto communicate with care coordinators. At the very least, the caseworker's name and when Medicaid is up for renewal. Um, they don't, I'm not sure that they don't do that anymore. I'm reasonably sure that they do communicate with care coordinators when the Medicaid is up for renewal, as long as they have an ROI. Now, I'm not prepared to speak to every and all situations. Uh, I know I've gotten reminders through care coordinator that Medicaid renewal was up. Also, it's a little odd right now because for a long time they weren't even renewing it, and now they're renewing it. And when they went to renewing it, they went in stages. They did everybody else and then waiver people. So it might be different now. But you definitely get a notice. The person definitely gets a notice. Okay. Slow response times. Okay. Yeah. They are aware of the issues and the response. This is why we came up, not we, SDS, but this is why they came up with this document with our help because our leadership communicates with them about what all's happening and what we're hearing and what's going on, and so they try to make adjustments or give better information so people can get their needs met better and quicker. Um, that is our latest info that we have through long-term care over at DPA. Okay, so it's 2:51. Did we get all your questions answered? Thinking about ARPA EMODs, not the same as waiver EMODs, but they are environmental modifications, so we're just calling them EMODs. 75 up to $75,000 available to licensed assisted living, certified and enrolled assisted living providers doing and licensed doing group home, residential supported living, or family habilitation. Up to $75,000 available for alterations to the home to meet the needs of people, particularly those with complex needs, either medical or behavioral, maybe both. Um, People whose needs are met by regular facility level of care interventions, as they have now today. This is we're looking for for serving people with complex needs, a home that intends to serve people with complex needs or is already serving people with complex needs. And also homes that have already done modifications can seek reimbursement of those that were already done, of modifications they already made and paid out of pocket. So we want to see those applications come in. The deadline is the 28th. E-alert went out about those. We had Summer with us here earlier to describe it. We'll send you the application forms. Please tell your professional colleagues and your families about this if this would be something that would be helpful to a person. Like Summer said, we really want that money spent out. Um, we never like to give any back when we could have spent it on helping Alaskans live in the community and live safely in their own community. Um, there's lots of rules around the application, but it's not hard. And there is assistance available. There is an email address available that you can just email for help. And I'm sure Summer and her team would be happy to help. Okay, last call for questions or thoughts.
Yeah, I just wanted to say this is my last provider info share with all of you. I'm
True.
moving on over to the infant learning program. So I wanted to just take a moment to thank you all for your hard work and being such great folks to work with. You all ask wonderful questions that, if we don't have the answers for, we help you find. And it's been such an honor to help you through those processes. So it's not a goodbye, it's just see ya in the ILP side of things. If you have any infant learning questions, you're always welcome to drop me a line. My email's going to stay the same.
Thank you, Delight. I know we're sad to see you go, but we're excited because ILP is a
Right.
wonderful thing. And I really love ILP and the work they do. It's very important working with our birth to age 3 set. And it'll be exciting. It'll be exciting to see new ways that we can work together. Yeah. There's thank yous coming in.
It's an honor to work with all of you. And maybe when I have some knowledge accumulated, I can come do some sort of info share
Yeah.
for you folks
You
at
could
some
do a
point.
talk. Yeah, that would be
Yeah,
super
could
duper.
be help. But until then, I'll see you at Full Lives for sure, though. You guys make sure if there's proposals, put in your proposals to present to Full Lives this week if you haven't done it. I know some of you agencies out there have very creative ways about getting things done. Your knowledge is valuable. We'd encourage you to apply and present a workshop at Full Lives.
Yeah. Please do. We'd love to see you there. Of course, we will see you there. Full Lives is always great. Lots of fun. Lots of brain work, but in a fun way. It's at the Sheraton, April 10th and 11th. You could search Full Lives 2025 Alaska, and it'll bring you right to their registry. I don't think their registration is open just yet, but you can see what they have. They do update it like very often. So their website. Sign up's not out yet. We'll know as soon as it's out. So we'll send an e-alert, but you can always check their page. It's through University of Alaska Center for Human Development, Full Lives 2025. Yeah.
Yeah, so right now they're doing just the call for proposals for workshops. So that any alerts that went out about it, that's what they target. And then the next one on registering will come up next.
hmm Okay. Well, we'll go ahead and close our session. Thank you, Delight. Thank you, training team. Thank you, Kat, Cassandra, Damon, and Summers, even though she took off. Um, we'll have our recording up on YouTube